Hello everyone, and welcome to today's CRM Magazine web event brought to you by Dun & Bradstreet. I'm Bob Fernikes. I'm the publisher of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled Targeting and Engaging Untapped Demand in Key Accounts, 3 Data-Driven Approaches to Account-Based Marketing. Before we start, I just want to explain how you can participate in today's live broadcast. At the end of the event, we'll have a question and answer session, so if you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the submit button. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but if we can't get to your question during the show, don't worry. You'll receive an email response to it within a few days. Plus, if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download a PDF from the resource icon on the console once the event is archived. Now to introduce our speakers for today, we've got Kerry Cunningham. He's the Research Director, Marketing Operations Strategies at SiriusDecisions, which is a Forrester Company, and Deniz Olcay, the Director of Product Marketing at Dun & Bradstreet. If you'd like to review the speakers' bios, just click on the arrows under their photos and you can read all about them. And now for today's agenda. First, we'll have a quick review, demand unit waterfall, followed by 3 varieties of buying group blindness, and then 3 data-driven approaches, followed up by key takeaways, and then we'll have the Q&A section. So now I'm going to pass the event over again to Kerry Cunningham, Research Director at Marketing Operations Strategies at SiriusDecisions, a Forrester Company. Welcome to the broadcast, Kerry.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. And hello, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. So we'll start off, talk a little bit about something I think most people in business-to-business marketing and sales are familiar with to some extent, but we want to cover it quickly today because it's a good context in which to look at the rest of the conversation. So the demand unit waterfall starts with having an understanding of what your addressable market is. Now, when we think of addressable market, most people think about accounts, but the fact is that most of us sell to a part of an account, and for many B2B organizations, you can sell to multiple parts of an account, either geographical parts of an account, regions, or you could sell to different departments within an account. So we want to be really clear about what that business entity is, and it's often not the account itself. So that's an important thing to understand. The next layer in the demand unit waterfall is the place where we'll be spending most of our time and attention today, which is understanding which of those organizations that we think are good targets for us might be actively in market today. And if we can focus more of our investment, more of our time and energy and money into marketing and selling to the set of accounts that are already in market, then we'll be much more efficient and effective. Next down is engaged. So which of those target organizations are actually showing up on my website or at my events, filling out forms, and allowing us to know who they are. Of those, which of those have done enough so that we've decided that we're going to invest some human effort into reaching out to those prospects and trying to find out if there's an opportunity and qualify that opportunity. So that's the prioritized demand stage. Next is qualified. Qualified means that we've got enough evidence that there's a real-term, near-term opportunity available in this organization that we're going to pass this off to sales and ask sales to invest some time and energy into qualifying that. If sales successfully does that, they turn it into pipeline, and then, of course, if that all goes well, it turns into close won revenue. We think when we look at the top of the waterfall, there's really 6 key jobs that a marketing organization does. The first of these is to identify the target accounts or the buying centers, the parts of those organizations that do the buying. Second one is detecting active buying groups. So we're going to talk more about the term buying groups in just a second, but which of the organizations have people out looking for solutions now? Then we're going to try to attract those people and get them to come engage with us directly. IP-based advertising, also whatever other digital and other tactics you can use, not just digital. Next, we want to engage those buyers, best practices to personalize those experiences so that we're optimally attracting and engaging those prospects. Validate whether those prospects are real near-term opportunities with personal outreach, and then help sales accelerate those opportunities through the pipeline. So now let's talk a little bit about why we say the account isn't quite the right thing to be thinking about and what we should be thinking about instead. All right, so when we think about the buyer, we often do hear people refer either to an account or to a person, an individual, either by name or by title or by buyer persona. But neither of these is quite right. The truth is normally somewhere in between. And so we created this concept we call the demand unit, which is kind of a wonky term, but what it means is that there's an organization that has a business need that we address with our solutions, and they have a group of people, a team of people, or a committee of people that are charged with the responsibility for addressing that business need. In other words, they've got a buying team that's going to go out and look for a solution to this business problem that they have. And when that business problem is something that you could solve, that organization that has that problem and that buying group is a demand unit for you. And the reason we use that wonky term is it's literally the unit of demand that you need to attract and engage. You could also just think of it as a potential opportunity before you really know much about it, which you're hoping to turn into a real sales opportunity. All right, so that's the setup. The issue here that we're talking about is the fact that we don't do a very good job of seeing when these buying groups that we're talking about, these teams of people that work together to make purchases, are actually out in market. We don't even see when they're on our own website most of the time. So I'll describe what we mean by that. There's three different ways that organizations miss seeing the demand that exists for their solutions. And the first way we think about is that we don't have the ability to see the difference between somebody who's on your website because they had time on their hands and some curiosity from somebody who's on your website because they're part of an active buying group. They're part of one of those committees or teams that's out looking for solutions. When we look at a lead on our website, somebody who just fills out a form, you can't tell the difference between those two things just by looking at them, and we'll talk about what you have to do instead. Second, we get a lot of buying signals from buyers, a lot of signals that come into our systems, our existing systems today, that we either suppress or completely ignore. And that may sound crazy. It is kind of crazy, but it is what most organizations are doing. We'll explain what we mean by that in just a minute. And then the third way is that most of the demand in B2B is expressed anonymously. Most visitors to B2B website don't fill out forms and don't identify themselves. But at first approximation, it's almost all of the people who come to your website don't identify themselves. And we ignore that completely, but we ignore that at our peril. Let me explain what that means. And the way that we'll explain it is by playing a game. So I hope everybody's up for playing a little game here. And this game we call Hot or Not. All right, and the game involves doing this. What we want you to do is take a look at these three opportunities I'm going to present and tell me which one, or think about which one your salespeople in your organization would be most excited about hearing about, would want to get most urgently. So the first one is a potential opportunity. It's a demand unit, if you want to think about it that way, that has one AQL. A lot of people would use the term MQL. That's just a lead that has scored up and it's hit your threshold, and now you're going to send it off to an SDR or a sales rep. Now the second demand unit comes from an equivalent kind of account, has the same kind of AQL, but it also has one other person who's in inquiry. That's what that INQ stands for. That means you've got one person who's filled out a form and they've downloaded a bunch of content, and you're going to score them up and send them off to the SDR team. But the other person has filled out the form, they look like a decent contact, have the right kind of title, but they haven't done much yet, so you're not ready to send that person off to the SDR team. Then the third example is this one. Here's where it gets tricky. You don't have any MQLs or AQLs on this third one. But what you do have is 4 different individuals, and let's say that, all things being equal, the account they're coming from is a good account, the titles that they have are decent titles. Which one of these 3 do you think your salespeople would want to know about right away? And we won't take a live poll here, but I'm going to guess that virtually all of you are going to agree with what we say about this. First, because only AQLs are actually sent to anybody in most organizations, those scored up leads. These first 2 potential opportunities over on the left look exactly the same in your systems. This third one isn't going to go anywhere. Right, so this third one, which is the one I suspect that most of you, now I've done this with audiences kind of numbering in the many, many thousands now, and generally it's about 90 to 93% of people who play this game choose this one over on the right, where they say that's the one that's most important to pass along. Problem is, because there aren't any SDRs or any AQLs, sorry, from this account yet, you're not going to do anything with it. It's just going to sit in your system and not go anywhere, and you're not going to tell anybody about it. And it's very unlikely that in your systems today you have a mechanism for identifying the fact that there's 4 people. So because that one's not an AQL yet or has no AQLs, you're not going to send that anywhere. And those first 2 look exactly alike. Now, I imagine that there were some of you who said, I kind of like that middle one because it's got an AQL, so somebody has kind of proven that they're really interested, and it's got another inquiry. So while probably 90+% of you chose the one on the right, the rest of you chose the one in the middle. When you look at how your systems operate, it's very likely that the one in the middle and the one on the left look exactly the same, and you wouldn't be able to tell a difference by looking at them. All right, so that's one way that we see buying group blindness, that we have buyers from those organizations that we might care about coming to our website, but we don't notice if we have 1 or if we have 5. They all look the same to us because we treat each lead independently as if they're not connected. All right, so we're going to play another round of Hot or Not, and chances are you'll get the right answer right away on this one too, but it's another example of buying group blindness. All right, now in this one we have 1 AQL, so same situation as before. In the middle, we have a potential opportunity, again, all things being equal, the account and the titles. We don't have an AQL here, so nobody's scored up, but we do have some third-party intent signals that tell us that, this account looks like it's interested in the kinds of things that we sell. It's out looking around at competitor websites and influencer websites, syndicated content, that kind of stuff. So we've got some evidence that this account is interested, and we have somebody on our website, but they haven't done very much yet. And then we've got a third. And the third one, we have the third-party intent signals, we have the inquiry, and we also have first-party intent. So what do I mean by first-party intent? Well, we use the term first-party intent to refer to those anonymous visitors on your website, the people who have come to your website, they haven't logged in, but they're trolling around looking at whatever content they can get without logging in. All right, now I suspect that most of you, again, would have chosen the one on the far right, and we see 80+% of people will choose that one when we do this. And the reason for that is that you can see that in that example, you have an overwhelming amount of evidence that this account is likely in market and they're demonstrating interest for you. Nobody has done enough on your website to score up and become an AQL, but you've got a lot of evidence that there's something happening here. So you probably would have chosen this one, but the only one that anybody in your organization is going to see is this one over on the left. Now, if you're using intent data already, good for you. You would have sent at least the one you wouldn't have sent the one in the middle, rather, because you don't have an AQL yet. So you still probably would have saved this one, but that's a step in the right direction. We know that these two would have been completely invisible in your systems. And so the one that you get and send to the team is the one that probably would be least likely to be exciting to your reps. All right, so that's the second way that our systems are blind. If you're not using all of these different signals that are available to you, chances are you're not seeing most of the demand for the solutions in your marketplace. And we want to put a little pin on this thing about anonymous traffic. All right, so the way it works in B2B today is that for every 100 visitors, you would be extremely lucky if you got 5 people to fill out forms. In most cases, it's really only about 2. But let's be really super generous and then use easy math, which is why I picked 5, and say that you got 5. What about the other 95 people who've come to your website? Now, I don't know all of the people in the audience today, but I talk to a lot of B2B organizations, and I know for a fact that most of you have lovely websites and you've got great content for people who are interested in your solutions and for nobody else. So there's nobody coming to your website by accident. Now, some people might be competitors. Some people might be they might be analysts like me, but isn't it likely that most of the rest of the people are really somebody that you would want to know about? In other words, aren't they likely from organizations that have the problem that you address with your solutions? And aren't they likely to be people in those organizations who are somehow involved in addressing those issues that you address with your solutions? So when we think about what's in that, all of that anonymous web traffic, we think it's probably really important that we find out what's in that web traffic. Now, when I talk about this, a lot of people will say, yeah, but, and then they'll raise a couple of objections. And they'll say, that there's a lot of junk in that anonymous web traffic, and anyway, it's really hard to find out what companies that traffic is coming from. And I'll agree that there is a bunch of junk, and it is hard if these are coming from, and the match rates are not great. But let's think about the math. So I've been super generous and said you're going to get a 5% conversion rate. I doubt any of you actually get that high. So let's say 5%. That would make you a great marketer, not a good one. So you get your 5%. What we typically find when we talk to our clients about their B2B web traffic, not B2C, but their B2B web traffic, is that about 25% of it, maybe it's as high as 30, but 25 or so % of it, is what we would think of as junk. Competitors, it's students, there's bots in that traffic, and the amount of bots in the traffic is growing all the time. But there's junk in there. Typically, it's not higher than this. If you're a big brand in your space, or if you're just a big brand, period, it could be substantially higher. But for most of you, it's going to be something like this. So we've accounted for 5% people who filled out a form, 25% is junk. That leaves about 70% of the rest of your traffic. That's probably not completely junk. That probably is from accounts that you could sell something to, and very likely people within those accounts that you could buy something from you or be involved in the decision. Then if we take a look at how we can do matching those visitors, we're going to estimate somewhere in the 30 to 50% match rate on that traffic. And that's pretty reasonable from what we see across the industry. So if we pick the higher value there for the ease of the math, we could easily find ourselves identifying where another 35% of our web traffic is coming from. Now, we don't have names attached to the web traffic at this point, but we do know what company it's coming from. So we started off with 5% web traffic. We started off with just knowing where 5% of our web traffic is coming from. But we could easily add another 25, 30% to that. And that would dramatically improve what your understanding is about what companies are in market for the kinds of solutions that you offer. So even if the math brings the number way down from, if it's really, and probably for you it is, probably about 98% of your web traffic is anonymous, once you start carving out the junk and you carve out the traffic that you can't match back to a company, it's very likely that you're still going to be able to multiply what you know about the demand for your traffic by 6, 7, 8, 9 fold. And when we think back to that second hot or not game that we played, I think everybody understands intuitively, if you know that an account is on your website and you're seeing a surge of activity on your website, that's an extremely important sign that we need to pay attention to. And then what we would say is add that sign to the fact that you've got leads from an account. You probably have multiple leads from an account. So in other words, one question you could go ask yourself is, if I have a lead from an account, do I have just one or do I have multiple leads? And if I have a lead from an account, do I also have other anonymous traffic from that account? And if I do, would that change how I look at that lead? Like, should my lead scoring incorporate anonymous traffic? And should it incorporate third-party intent signals from outside your organization? We think the answer is yes, in short, which is why, of course, we've been talking about it. So Deniz is going to take over now, and he's got some great examples of Dun & Bradstreet customers who are working this way, and Dun & Bradstreet itself. So Deniz, I'll pass it over to you, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you for that great introduction and content. As you mentioned, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes here and show a couple of customers that we've worked with at Dun & Bradstreet, as well as what we're doing with some of these data-driven approaches. And for those of you that are not familiar with Dun & Bradstreet, we are one of the largest B2B data providers, and we work with specifically marketing and sales teams to help them identify, target, and engage their audiences, whether it's online or offline. So I selected two examples that some of our customers have done and have been working with us with our solutions and data, in addition to what we are doing with some of these data-driven strategies. So as Kari mentioned, I mean, the importance of on-site and off-site intent data is really quite obvious, right? It's really uncovering those signals that show prospects and accounts are ready to buy before they've even engaged with you on a form or, clicked on an email or engaged in web chat, right? It's really unmasking those hidden intent signals early in the journey, and we all know how the B2B buying journey is becoming increasingly self-serve and digital. So really engaging and tapping into this data as a competitive advantage is really imperative to make your marketing and sales performance more effective. Kari touched on this a little bit, but for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with these data assets, what are the different types of intent data? You might hear third-party and first-party intent data, right? Third-party being what's going on off your website, also called off-site data, off-site intent data, right? Basically the digital marketing that's occurring on the broader internet, right? So your buyers might be on New York Times, they might be on TechCrunch, they might be on, other publications off your website doing research, right? And these are buying signals that you can tap into and leverage to target better messages and better direct your sales efforts. So that's third-party intent data that you can leverage in your strategy. And first-party intent data or on-site intent is really when they enter your digital storefront, if you will, right? When they've landed on your website, they've raised their hand, they're more engaged in your products, they're aware of them, and they're further below on the demand unit waterfall, and now they're engaging with your content, but they haven't necessarily filled in a form yet, right? And this is that intent data that you can tap into with specific technologies that you can activate in your web analytics platforms that I will cover in a little bit. But this really helps you tap into that 70% or so not junk audience, as Kari was referring to. So the first example I'd like to share is with a customer that we worked with at Dun & Bradstreet. This is a provider of integration and analytics software for companies that are basically using on-prem or cloud environments and trying to stitch together the data across those. They were basically looking for ways to tap into their digital traffic and grow account revenue from key accounts that they had identified. So they were previously doing spray and pray. Basically anyone that landed on their website was getting an ad, and that really wasn't very effective from an ROI perspective or a media spend perspective, and their early stage buyers were not engaged. So they worked with us to tap into creating different account fit profiles based on third-party and first-party intent data. So you'll see here, they basically said, okay, let's engage all of our accounts that have had no activity on our website in the past 12 months, but we know that are searching or engaging with content off our website relative to our offerings. So you'll see there the fit is high. The third-party intent signals that they're demonstrating are analytics, cloud, business intelligence, right? So they selected specific topics that were related to their business, and they married that with the first-party engagement data that they knew, right? There was no activity on their website, but they are, browsing other publications or topics related to it, and they matched their digital ads to fit those different profiles. So you'll see here, power your data-driven manufacturing with visual analytics. And on the right, you'll see, tightly integrate your apps and deliver better experiences, right? And you'll see, the topics that they were browsing on the right were related to data lakes and integration. So tailoring the copy and the creative to the intent profile, both off the website and on the website, drove much more engagement with their key accounts. The best part of this is they really didn't stop there, right? They pursued a omnichannel engagement strategy by working with us and activating a customer data platform to really stitch together all these different activation endpoints. So you'll see an example of an email here, right? So when that same account visited the website or was demonstrating or fitting that profile, they were dropped into a nurture stream, right? And they were also married with different technologies that they were using that were relevant to their offering. So you'll see here, I've blurred out, some of the specifics here, but highly tailored, personalized email copy going out to accounts that are demonstrating, the first-party engagement. So visiting those product pages on the website, using particular technologies, right? So you can layer on technology data to tailor this outreach and really include it in the email copy and see higher engagement with those accounts. So both off the website, they're seeing those relevant and personalized ads. They land on the website and perhaps download some content, but when they leave, they're dropped into a very specific nurture stream relevant to what they're browsing for. So very, very effective and personalized engagement strategy here. So that's the marketing side of it, but we know that in B2B, you need sales involvement and alignment to be successful, and this is really critical for any account-based marketing strategy is sales buy-in and alignment. So what they also did was deliver these account fit profiles and the activity that was happening on the website to specific sales teams that own those accounts. So you'll see a little screenshot here inside of Salesforce, where sellers are living and breathing each and every day, giving a recommendation to engage a account that has demonstrated some sort of offsite or onsite intent activity, and layering in some of the other selection criteria to make the seller more aware of why this is a good account to pursue. So aligning the marketing and the sales together by using intent data was quite powerful for this customer to pursue an omnichannel ABM strategy. So that's one example. We at Dun & Bradstreet also like to use some of our own data and technology. When we first released this solution about 3 years ago, D&B Visitor Intelligence, to help unmask that on-site intent, we experimented with web de-anonymization to feed more insight to our marketing team. So we started small, right? Started with a couple of pages on our website, a specific section of our website related to our sales and marketing solutions. And I would recommend to all of you that are considering this to pursue a similar strategy. Don't try to boil the ocean, right? Start small, prove the value to your key business stakeholders, and then do a broader rollout. So all the web interactions that were happening on our website were basically mapped to our unique identifier, the DUNS number, which really helped us associate, which accounts and which contacts mapped to those accounts we're engaging on our website. So we built sort of a funnel graphic of the test that we ran for about a month. So we had about 150,000 anonymous visitors to the specific pages where we deployed this technology. We were able to identify about 50,000 of those anonymous visitors, again, about a third or so of the anonymous traffic that was relevant to our business, and we knew were sort of tied to our key account profiles. Then we took it a step further. With the power of the DUNS number and having that unique identifier, we were able to stitch together those anonymous visits to specific accounts and headquarter locations. So we kind of rolled it up and said, okay, about 6,000 unique accounts and unique headquarter locations visited our website. Then we took that a step further and said, okay, which one are current customers or current accounts? And which ones are prospects, to sort of fuel our engagement strategy based on that. And then we took it a step further. We said, okay, of those accounts, how can we map that to Salesforce data, our CRM data, in the opportunity stages, right? Which ones are early stage opportunities that might require a different engagement strategy, and which one are late stage opportunities that we might be able to give to our sales team for immediate follow-up. So this gave us tremendous visibility into our website and being able to tap into that invisible demand, if you will, and which was later rolled out broadly across the entire website. So one example of using that data and the power of, again, the DUNS number as a unique identifier, stitching it to an account location, and then being able to marry all the team members and the contacts that we had in our CRM to those accounts that we're engaging to further advance the opportunity. So that's how we used it on our website. I'll share, another customer success story. This one is Pure Storage. They basically develop all flash data storage hardware and software products. They were founded in about 2009, so relatively young company experiencing rapid growth, and they were really looking for ways to personalize and scale their ABM program to increase wallet share with key accounts. So they needed the support for that ABM program and wanted to take a data-driven approach to remove the friction from their website and also their demand gen process. So they deployed Visitor Intelligence on their homepage to personalize the messaging returning visitors and returning accounts, and also use the technology on their web forms to pre-populate some of the information. And again, their goal was to improve impressions, improve click-through rates, and drive engagement with those accounts. They saw some pretty tremendous results. They saw 850% lift in click-throughs from specific verticals, and I'm going to cover what they exactly did in just a second. And engagement from all their top 20 key accounts increased by about 50%, 48%, 50% in 1 year. So tremendous spikes in activity by being able to deliver a more personal, relevant experience. So they started with, with simple reverse IP lookup, right? Before engaging with Dun & Bradstreet, they can quickly take a look at the IP addresses visiting their website and get a sense for, okay, they're visiting from this specific country or this specific location. But just having the location data wasn't sufficient enough. With the power of that de-anonymization technology, they were able to append which accounts, what's the unique identifier, what is the industry, right? What are the different decision-making levels and functions within that account that is visiting, right? With internet privacy laws, you're not really allowed to unmask the specific contact, but you can still get visibility into the job level and job function of people visiting your website, which gives you more insight into that buying team, right, that's engaging on your website. So we were able to append some of that data on top of that. And now they married some of their first-party data in their CRM, right? So since they know which accounts are visiting, without filling in a form, they know, which entity that is. They can start marrying, okay, in our CRM, we know the first name, last name, and email of the people that we have at those accounts. So now we can start engaging them. So marrying sort of the third-party data that Dun & Bradstreet was providing and also the first-party data that they already had in their CRM to really get a full picture of who was engaging on their website. Another example of how they used the technology was in forms. So what they basically did was deploy this technology in forms to reduce some of that friction. As Kari mentioned, if you're doing a great job, 5% are filling in a form, and nobody likes filling in, too many attributes. But if we're able to identify, an account that's maybe not in your marketing automation system, but is mapped to the Dun & Bradstreet data cloud of 350 million or so companies, we can pre-populate part of the domain of the email. So you'll see that @TLD is a top-level domain. So an example here, Microsoft.com. We know that the company name is, Microsoft Canada, so their Canadian division is visiting the website, and we can populate the country and the province as well, and then let the user or the visitor populate their personally identifiable information like their name and their email. So really exciting what they did here, and we're able to accelerate some of those form conversions into their marketing automation platform. Another example, and again, this is a little bit more of an advanced use case. Most of the customers that we work with really start proving the value more on the analytics side and passing that information for, email nurture or to sales team follow-up, but they took it a step further and said, okay, let's personalize specific pages of our website based on the different account industries that we focus on, and build relevant experiences for them. So you'll see at the bottom there, a first-time visitor would get a control experience, so the basic or not customized experience. But if we're able to map to a specific vertical, like healthcare or financial services, or that is in market for a specific product, like their flash array or flash braid products, we can actually deliver specific experiences through Adobe Target or through web personalization platforms that are more relevant to them. So you'll see the impressions there and the significantly higher click-through rates on the healthcare and the financial services specific pages. So this takes a little bit of effort, right? Because someone has to actually build those pages, update those pages, and test them. But once you do, and if you have enough scale of visitors from specific accounts and industries, the engagement levels go through the roof, and you'll see that 850% and 469% lift over the first-time control experience, which was really, really exciting for them. And overall, they wanted to sort of prove the value of this offering to their, management team and to senior leaders, and they said, okay, let's take a look at Q1 of 2018. What were our page views across our top 20 accounts, and what was it Q1 of 2019 this year? And you can see, the significant lift in engagement across all of them, right? Close to 50% lift in engagement across all those accounts. The page views, in addition to the actual engagements on the web, like clicking on something or downloading something, went really high. So this was another way that they proved the value of that solution to their business stakeholders and leveraged that third-party intent and first-party intent data on their website. They again, another step forward and further that they took this and married it to the bookings and opportunities in their CRM, and sort of built a timeline and said, okay, based on the year and the month, what are the opportunities that are created in our CRM, and what are the bookings that we see shortly thereafter correlated with page views, right? So you see that dotted line is the page views of those accounts. And this is a specific account that I've sort of masked here, but you'll see enough opportunities created. There's a spike in page views, and there's a booking, and there's a sort of a dip and another spike in page views, and there's a booking. So you'll see this is how they sort of prove the value with some of their key accounts that represented a lot of business for them, and proving the value for on-site intent data. So those are sort of two data-driven strategies that you can pursue, right? First-party intent data, third-party intent data. There's another data-driven strategy specifically that can be beneficial for both marketing and sales teams around relationship data, right? So what is that? Once you're further down along in the demand unit waterfall, as Kari mentioned, you want to prioritize where you invest human effort, because that is, one of your most valuable assets, but it's also one of your most expensive. So you really want to make sure sellers are prioritizing which accounts that they are going after, right? We talked about using first-party or third-party intent data as a way to prioritize, but relationship data can also help you, and this is where Dun & Bradstreet can help. All the account data that we have in our database is mapped to corporate families, and I've shown a representation here in the D&B Hoovers offering, our sales intelligence offering, and I've picked an example account, right? International Business Machines, IBM, right? But which IBM, right? IBM is a huge company with many different offices, many different divisions, subsidiaries, many of which we don't even have buying authority, right? So what you can do with relationship data is really direct your sellers to focus on entities and business units and divisions that have buying authority. So what we've done here is we've mapped the entire account family tree here. So if IBM is a key account of yours, your sellers can take a look and say, okay, I have a relationship with, IBM in Memphis, Tennessee, right at the very top. But, without this intelligence, your sellers might be just going blindly trying to expand a wallet share across the account and find white space, right? So they might be focused at different branch locations. They might not even know that those are branch locations or whether they have buying authority or not. With the power of Dun & Bradstreet's analytics, we actually track divisions and locations that have buying authority. We have information on how businesses are transacting and presence of C-level, VP-level executives, and we build models to indicate whether specific locations can actually purchase something. And you'll see that indicated with a star, right? So let's say Tulsa, Oklahoma, the location there has buying authority, and as indicated with that star. So if we marry that information along with account engagement on the website, now you have some really low-hanging fruit and a laser-focused account that sellers should be spending their time on, as opposed to the hundreds and hundreds of other locations that IBM may have across the globe. So just another example of a data-driven strategy that your sellers can use. This can also be used for marketing segmentation purposes as well, if you want to deliver specific emails or ads to specific buying locations as well. So with that, I'll sort of pass it back to Kari to give us a couple key takeaways before we take Q&A.
Great, thanks, Deniz. Had to hit the mute button, almost forgot that. All right, so the first thing to take away is to understand that you're probably blind to most of the demand that your organization experiences, and that 95+% of your web traffic is anonymous, and probably a good deal of that, a third to a half, somewhere in there, is traffic that you ought to know something about that could have an impact on how you prioritize your spend and your human efforts in marketing and in sales. There's also a decent chance that when you have even one lead from a target account, you probably have other people from that same account who are on your website, not even anonymously, but who have also filled out forms. What we need to do is make sure that we add up those signals from those accounts so that we see them together and we can see the impact of having multiple people from an organization. That's really indicative of a buying process. And the other thing is that you're probably actively suppressing second, third, fourth leads you get from organizations. A lot of teleteams will automatically look to see whether they have an open opportunity when they get a lead for that account. And if they do, they mark that lead as duplicate or already working or something like that. It's a big mistake. We want to make sure that the sales rep who's working an account knows that they're getting additional buying signals. They may not need to call that new person, but they should be informed that that new person or those new people are showing up. Particularly for those of you who are doing account-based marketing, doing some form of ABM, if you're doing that, there's a very good chance that you're going to cause more people from those organizations to come to your website if you succeed. And you want to be able to recognize that that's happening and capitalize on the fact that it's happening. This isn't something that you fix overnight necessarily, but it is something that you can do in a kind of stepwise fashion, and every step along the way is going to help. So, for instance, you could eliminate, if you've got a process in place that marks second, third, fourth leads from an organization as duplicate, you can eliminate that today and make sure that you attach all leads to accounts, convert them and attach them to an account. You can also start to identify where your anonymous traffic is coming from and put that into the mix as you're prioritizing your leads so that you're doing that in the context of who else is on your website. And then look at that web traffic. Understand for your organization how much is anonymous, how much is junk. Your mileage is going to vary, and it may be 10 or 20% that you need to pay attention to, or it may be 40 or 50%. The point is, you probably don't know today, and the vast majority of everybody in the world who's responding to your marketing is doing so anonymously, so you need to find out. One thing that you can do is pull a bunch of data from your marketing automation system and start looking at the number of accounts and the number of leads. We tend to operate as if leads and accounts occurred in a 1-to-1 ratio. So I talked about this a minute ago. They really, really don't. It's very rare that we see a ratio of less than 2-to-1. For the most part, we have at least a couple of leads from every account that shows up in marketing automation, so take a look at that. And then audit those rules that your SDRs use. We've got a bunch of research if you're a SiriusDecisions client that you can make use of today, but if you're not, you can certainly find out about how to become one and look at our blogs. I've written a bunch of blog posts on this website, and anybody can get to those. So with that, I'll say thank you and see if we have any questions you want to address.
Hey, great. Thanks, Kari. Thanks, Deniz. We're moving into the Q&A section right now. So if anybody has any questions, this is a great time to ask either Kari or Deniz. But I have a question that I'm just going to throw out there, and either one of you can chime in. We hear a lot about privacy regulations. How do you see CCPA and other upcoming privacy regulations impacting web de-anonymization tactics? Is it a sustainable marketing activity, or will it become obsolete after the regulations start to become enforced? Who wants to tackle that first?
I can take that one. This is Deniz. Yeah, we hear that one a lot, and rightfully so. We're also investigating that and the impact of CCP and other regulations. Shortly following GDPR in the EU. But I will say that web de-anonymization focuses mostly on unmasking the company, right? So the account level information. So it's not really considered PII or personally identifiable information, as it's not really unmasking, your email or your name or your last name, right? Thus, it's really protecting individual privacy. I'd really make sure that you're careful if you're working with folks or other vendors that are promising unmasking actual individual identity, as it does really violate internet privacy laws, and with CCPA coming in effect, you might be putting yourself in trouble there. And again, most organizations that help with this type of technology do hash any of that personally identifiable information and sensitive information about the individual. So you will be protected. An organization can still append their first-party data that they know about the account, right? So as we shared earlier, that's what Pure Storage did, right? They knew the account that was visiting, and then they mapped, what they already knew about the account in their CRM to that information to get a full picture of, the individuals that might be on their site and engaging them. So they're making a little bit of an educated guess there about who's on their website, specifically at the individual level. But again, protecting themselves and making sure that they're not getting into any sort of regulatory trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if you want to chime in, Kari, or we can.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. Yeah.
Okay,
that's right.
Great. Hey, okay, so here's a question, and I kind of had a similar question. Okay, so the question is there a specific industry that you work with that struggles a lot with this type of setup? I'm in the professional services field, and it's from Melanie in the Q&A section. Is there any industries that work particularly well?
Deniz, I'll jump in for 1 second and talk about something that we find, and I'm interested to hear your perspective. I wouldn't say, from our perspective, what we're seeing with our clients is not that an industry where this works, but there are a couple of segments, if you will. So when we think about third-party intent and seeing who's out off your site looking around for solutions, if you have a solution that is a new concept for people, you're solving a problem that, if your sales process involves convincing your prospects that they have a problem before convincing them how to solve it, then it's going to be difficult to identify coherent signals that your potential buyers are leaving. In other words, if they don't know what they're looking for when people go out on the internet to look for solutions, the tracks that they leave are not going to be coherent. They're going to be walking around a bunch of different directions. So it's a little bit difficult, and they may not be finding you, so your first-party intent signals may not be very useful in that case. And then also, if you're selling into the SMB space, that may minimize the benefit that you can get to some extent. But I'm interested to hear what, Deniz, what you think about that.
Yeah, I'll build on that, Kari. I think it's all about the buying dynamic, as you explained, right? Is it buyer-driven demand, or is it seller or driven demand by you as an organization, right? They might not even know they have a problem, right?
Right.
And in that case, they're not really searching for anything on the website or on the internet, right? And that can be a challenge, right? So if you're in the professional services field, like if you're offering consulting, the people that you're trying to target might not even know they need consulting, or they're not really searching for anything specific, right? They're sort of unaware, and that's seller-driven demand, right? Your sales team or your organization needs to make them aware that they have a problem. So in that case, that can be a struggle, but you can sort of get to raising awareness with those accounts with other types of data beyond just intent data. You can use the firmographic profile, or you might already know which accounts you want to go after and raise awareness with them, right? And again, another specific, I think, segment of the market that might struggle with this kind of setup is companies that have very low web traffic, maybe small businesses, right, that don't really have enough volume to sort of justify an investment in a technology like this. And I think that comes with, really taking digital transformation to heart and really trying to drive activity to your web properties and building the volume, after which, you can justify an investment and say, okay, I've unmasked, a third of it, or, a quarter of it, and I'm getting ROI from that. So I guess those are my thoughts in terms of, what specific industries or types of accounts might be struggling with this.
Okay, great. Actually, Melanie has a follow-up question. She said, basically, the question is, what's the biggest challenge in setting up these type of configurations for an organization, and what department usually handles that? Is it usually the marketing department, the IT department, the e-commerce department, or I don't know if you can kind of give us any kind of insight into that. Who do you usually work with?
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I mean, I can give my opinion and sort of what we've seen with our customers, and then Kari can build on that. Definitely, the web team, if you have a dedicated web analytics team, they would be involved. Typically, IT might get involved if you're at a larger organization and you need to make sure that you're deploying technologies that align with your privacy and security. So they might be an influencer or have a seat at the table. But you're typically going to probably see demand gen, right? Your demand gen team, integrated marketing, and web teams involved in something like this. And I think the biggest challenge is proving the value, right? And I would recommend starting small. Doing a test on specific pages or with specific accounts where you have a lot of opportunity that's untapped, and proving the value, just like we did at Dun & Bradstreet, right? Even when we rolled out our own technology, we started on a specific segment of our business, proved the value, and then broadened it across the whole website. So that would be my guidance.
Okay, great. Good. I noticed you used IBM as an example in your presentation, and companies like IBM seem to just be so difficult, just because there's so many different layers, there's so many different physical locations. There's it's just such a large company that it's really hard to make sense of it, especially if you're on the outside and trying to figure out how to connect the dots. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about get a little bit more granular in how your product sort of connects all the dots and lets salespeople figure out how to go to the area that can make the sale or can purchase a solution. Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned sort of at the beginning of my section, right, we at Dun & Bradstreet have been collecting business data for, over 175 years, right? And part of our business is rooted in business credit reporting. So we have a proprietary database of companies that are looking to establish good credit standing, and we sort of monitor and score that. And as part of that, a lot of the information is self-reported and highly accurate by those organizations. And over all those years, we've really mapped each account family, and as I showed that earlier, we know each location, whether they're a subsidiary, whether they're a branch, whether they're a headquarter location, and we've mapped them each to each other. So we're not just saying IBM visited your website like some others might, right? We're actually telling you a specific site and a unique identifier tied to that specific site that's visiting. And this really helps, right? If you've got an account-based marketing team and a sales team, you might, for an account like IBM, you might have multiple account reps targeting that account, and you don't want account conflict, right? And you really need to understand which demand unit or which account is visiting, right, in that family tree. So that can really help. And then we, like I said, we layer on some of our analytic data on top of that that says, okay, we know that there's C-level executives, we know that there's VP-level executives at this location with our contact database, and we know, that the company is growing and is paying their bills on time and is spending, right? And we use an analytic model to say, okay, this is a location with buying authority, right, that sellers should focus on. So we try to deliver some of this insight to sellers, both in Salesforce and in our cloud-based solution, and it really helps prioritize that activity. Great. Yeah, I saw that link back into Salesforce. That was pretty cool. Okay, so here's another question. We've explored personalizing web content by industry and persona, but found out that it's a big strain on resources. Any tips on how to get started? I know you mentioned that that's fairly time-consuming and basically takes a lot of effort. I don't know if you can speak to this question. Yeah, absolutely. I think you just have to pick key industries, I think, that are relevant to your business and represent the highest opportunity, and start there, right? Or you might say, I want to pick a specific account group by geography, right, and build a specific experience for them. Just build one page, right? Build a splash page that they would arrive to once identified, and run it against a control group, right? Prove the value there, and then broaden it from there. Okay.
Yeah, I would also add that it's extremely likely, 100% likely, that there are various buyer personas showing up on your website and in your marketing automation data and all of that today. So you already are attracting and engaging different buyer personas. So it's really important to understand what that looks like today. And first of all, make sure that you exploit, and I mean that in a good way, exploit what's already happening. So make sure that you notice when you have different buyer personas, especially from the same account showing up. And then start to use what you already know about the demand that you're already creating to help you understand what the priority is for creating content for new or different buyer personas.
Okay, great. I don't know if you guys can just sort of give us an idea of what is the percentage of, let's say, Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 1000 companies that do a good job with these kind of technologies to find out who is visiting their website?
I put that number pretty low, Dennis. I'd be interested to hear what you think. I talk with our clients about this all the time. Probably pretty heavily weighted toward mid-size or larger tech companies who are generally at the fairly front end of these trends, and I would say that's still probably not more than 20%. So I would imagine that overall it's quite a lot lower than that.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, especially even with large Fortune 100, 1,000 accounts. They're so big that they have different departments, many different marketing teams, sometimes even different domains, right? And you might actually see one team being very sophisticated and implementing a strategy like this when the other side of the business, another business unit or location has no idea, right? So I think I would agree with Kerry there, right? It's never too late to pursue a strategy like this and test. And as marketers, we should always be testing, right? Always be A/B testing different technologies and tactics, because you never know what's going to work for you, right? And I think we typically see tech as being the forefront, the tech vertical, taking this on. But we're seeing increasing pickup in the financial services industry as well. A lot of our clients are using this technology there as well.
And, last word on that, just to that point, one of the things that I say when I tell people about this problem, because I talk about this buying group blindness stuff a lot, and what I'll say to a CMO is the only reason that the fact that you are blind to these buying groups that are on your website, et cetera, the only reason that's not crushing your business is because all of your competitors are too. So you have a window to fix this, and the first ones that do are going to win, and they're going to win for a while. So I think now is a really, really great time to pay attention to this and fix this. It's not hard, and it's really obvious to do once you realize it's there.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing as you guys were running through your presentations, that this would certainly give somebody a competitive edge, having all this in buying intent information at their fingertips, especially when it's like matched right up against Salesforce opportunities. But that's great for our listeners today. So we're heading up on top of the hour right now, unless you've got anything else you'd like to say, Dennis. But I'd just like to thank everybody that joined us today, everybody that asked any questions, and also thank our speakers. Again, Kerry Cunningham, Research Director of Marketing Operations Strategies at SiriusDecisions, a Forrester Company, and Deniz Olcay, Director of Product Marketing at Dun & Bradstreet. Thanks for supporting us and coming on. We've also got a few people chiming in on the question thing, thanking you as well. So just to remind everybody, if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download it once the event is archived. If you'd like to review the event or send it to a colleague, you can use the same web address that you used for today's event. It'll be archived for 90 days. Plus, don't worry, we'll send you an email tomorrow with the link there as well, so you can send it to a colleague or whatever you'd like. And just for participating in today's web event, you could also win this $100 American Express gift card. And the winner will be announced tomorrow, so you don't have to wait very long, October 31st. And don't worry, we'll reach out to you via email if you were selected as this month's winner. So that concludes our broadcast today, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's webcast. We appreciate your participation. You may now disconnect. Presenters, please stand by.